One of the questions that I get asked most often is if a loved one is going through addiction, normally with the parent-child relationship, so a son or daughter is addicted to drugs and starting to treat the parent like shit. It can also be with a relationship with a partner or a sister or a brother or a friend. Whatever it is, I get asked all the time, at what point do I let this person go for now? At what point do I set some really, really strong boundaries? Because I don't want to give up on them. Now, in an answer to that question, this is what people want to hear, okay? We want to hear, well, if any of these happen this amount of times, this is when you do it. So if they steal from you 5 times, or if they verbally abuse you 7 times, or if they physically abuse you twice, or if from the first of those occasions, 9 months and 8 days elapse, that's the trigger point to cut them out. Basically, we want a black and white answer. We want a very concrete thing that we can latch onto. Unfortunately, this situation is not black and white. It's very, very, very grey because every single person going through an addiction is different. Every single parent or loved one who's dealing with them is different, and every relationship between those two people are different. So this answer cannot be black or white. So what's the best answer I can give? I want you to think about it this way. I want you to imagine inside of you, when dealing with this situation, you have this internal state and this set of scales. On one side of the scales is love and compassion. On the other side of the scales is resentment. Now, these scales will go up and down to varying degrees a lot of the time. If we find ourselves tipping towards dealing with this person with love and compassion the majority of the time, I would continue to try and help them and keep trying to move forward. Now, if those scales dip in the way of resentment the majority of the time, and you find yourself in a state of resentment a lot of the time, most of the time, that is when I would start to enforce some very, very strong boundaries and maybe even cut that person out at that time. Why? Because the state of resentment is soul suicide. Resentment is poison. The moment you're dipping into resentment the most of the time, you're not only poisoning yourself, you are actually poisoning the person or the loved one that you are trying to help. And that resentment can even prevent that person, even though your intention is the opposite, it can prevent them from getting the help that they need, admitting they have in the problem, and it can prolong that process. So be very, very aware of the scales that are happening inside you if you are dealing with an addicted loved one who is treating you poorly. And if you are dipping into resentment, see that as a sign or a trigger point to make some very, very strong changes. Whether that's cutting them out completely for now, whether that's setting some very, very strong boundaries, I would highly suggest that because, as I said, resentment is soul suicide. Hope this helps.